All right, so what I've been doing is, since I bought the Blessed War Wagon, I've been writing down all these notes of all the things I wish that I had known before I went RV shopping to hopefully produce the video that I wish I had seen in advance of doing the damn thing. So I'm going to go through all these because of the new YouTube uploader classic change. I'm not sure. I can only upload smaller videos because we all know that once I can get going, these things can get pretty lengthy. So part of this I'm going to have to put on Patreon, and we're just going to have to do things that way because the older, easier way of managing this doesn't work anymore. Okay? Okay. All right. So the first thing that, and I would say that this is like by far the most important. If you don't want to watch after this tip, that's fine. Have a good day. Is to shop for your salesperson first. When I knew that like everything else that I had already talked about was not going to work, I'm not doing another van conversion, I knew what my budget was, and I had an idea of what kind of RV I wanted. Now, in a different video, I told you that I went through all the options from a B to an A. Now I have a fifth wheel, everything in between. So when I would find models or makes that I thought would work for me, I would just take my budget number, and then on all the apps or websites, RV Trader, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever, I would just send out these mass emails. Like, I'd find it, and then I'd say, this is my budget, like, would you accept this price? Or could we work in this range? And just like machine gun approach. And that was kind of exhausting and not really effective. It was effective in so much that I kind of narrowed down like who was willing to negotiate and who wasn't. But it just was a lot of confetti. And then what would happen is then someone, particularly at a dealership, they would respond and say, well, we think we can get like kind of in that range, or, why don't you come down and like test drive it and see, we maybe can work something out. And so then I would just be taking whoever responded to that email. If you send out a mass email or a generic email to any kind of RV dealership or any dealership period, you're just getting whoever answers. And if I'm buying like a table, maybe I don't care as much. But for something of this magnitude of a financial purchase, what I really should have done is shopped for my salesperson first and then have gone to get the rig that I wanted. Here's why. On YouTube, on video, anywhere else, I am the first person to crack a joke. I'm always trying to make people laugh. I try to keep things pretty lighthearted. When I'm making any kind of financial decision, especially a decision for my business, it is a very different Casey Roman. I don't like to laugh when I'm making financial decisions. I don't like any gray area. Everything's very black and white. I'm very straight to the point. And I need someone on the other end of the table who is exactly the same way. I am no bullshit when I am making any kind of financial or investment purchase or decision. The problem is, I would be getting this menagerie of human beings who, I thought this was like just the thing that I was going to use once in a while, or didn't think that I would really buy it, or thought that I wasn't that serious about it because there are not many single women in my age range who are buying big trailers or big RVs. And so I was just getting like kind of the runaround of people, and it wasn't a good match of personalities. Where this kind of came to a head is I did my blast email, and I get this guy, and we actually agree on the price at a dealership, and we're on the phone. I just had kind of like this bad gut feeling, and we're going back and forth, and we get to the part of any kind of negotiation that is not particularly fun. It's, when you're like down to the last details, and you're not going to budge, and they're not really going to budge, and like somebody's got to budge. And he threw out the B word. Not bitch. That word I am extremely familiar with. That one goes right over my head, along with a number of others that I've been called. You really have to try to hurt my... After 10 years in TV, like, you really have to get creative to hurt my feelings on the internet. So he throws out the B word, and the B word is baby. Every woman watching this video just went like this. Baby? Baby? Now, in the South, sometimes men, women, everybody has these like little terms of endearment that they use when they're talking. And I understand that. I also know when there's a place for them and when there's not. When we are talking about the magnitude of the expense that we were addressing, baby should never have entered into the equation. Baby is what you say, especially to a woman, when, I don't think anyone ever says it to a man, when you don't take her seriously and you're looking down at her. And the issue that I had, and ladies, hear me on this one, if you're going to be doing this by yourself, is that, and this wasn't just at this dealership, it was at many, where people did not think that I could write the check. So they did not take me seriously when I came in there and said, I want to test drive that one. And I got kind of this like, well, your husband or your boyfriend. I'm like, no. Right here, focus. Baby's name is on the check, so say my name with a little respect. That was said by Mother Teresa. Also possibly Miley Cyrus in that new horrible remake of Charlie's Angels.
I make my money and I write the check, so say my name with a little respect.
One or the other. It doesn't matter. It was time and time again that, like, I ran into this. So when he started with the B word, I was like, that's it, we're done. You don't think that I can actually make this purchase. Baby became Babysaurus. Real quick. We just had, it just didn't work. When I went down to Florida and really went for a salesperson who was going to work with my personality, I ended up getting a very different human being who was much more straight to the point. He knew that I was sarcastic but serious. He also understood when I said I can write the check that I meant it. And we got things done way quicker. So, moral of the story is, if you know that you shop a certain way, if you need to have your hand held through the process, if you're very emotional when you shop, which some people are, it's fine, then you need to be with a salesperson who can address that. I just want to come in and get this done and sign the paperwork and be over with it. I don't need you to turn on the lights and do this whole pony show for me. That's not how I buy things. I buy things based on numbers. Okay? And don't call me baby, you I noticed at dealerships buying from people who own their RV that they would brag a lot when their RVs had low miles, as though this was some magical, wonderful thing that was so great. No. What happens is so many people, especially retirees, they have disposable income, they go out, they get an RV, they drive it twice, and then it sits in their yard for years. When they go to resell it, they are just all about, it's so low mileage, it's brand new. Listen, something with this big of an engine, particularly diesel, these are meant to be driven. We all saw what happened to the Scion when after 6 months of letting the Scion sit idle, I tried to drive it again. That thing was falling apart. Vehicles are meant to be driven. The fluids need to pass through the tubes and the coil. Everything. They are meant to move. So when somebody tells you that their rig has low miles and an RV dealership is this thing has low miles, it better also have low years. It better be new-ish. There was one in particular that the damn thing was a 2011 or 2012 and had, I think, 6,000 miles. And that was the big selling point. And I thought, no, that is the reason not to buy this thing. It has sat. So watch the mileage and don't get seduced by low mileage. Even in a diesel is not really broken in until you start getting over 80,000, 100,000 miles. Now people see that and are like, oh my God, it's been driven to death. Well, the diesel is meant to be on the road. So chances are, even if it has 100,000 miles, it's probably going to work for you for hundreds of thousands of more miles. That's okay. It's not okay when it's been parked at Nana and Pop-Pop's for years. This is not so much a buying guide, it's my message to sellers. For the love of God, please stop selling your stuff on consignment. Consignment is when you write a check for thousands of dollars, flat fee, or a percentage, usually 15 to 20%, and you hand your RV over to a mechanic, a dealership, auto body shop. I've seen them in all different places, and they agree to hold your RV and deal with the buyers on your behalf, but you're going to pay them that percentage. These were universally the most difficult situations to deal with because you have deliberately added a middleman. So what would happen is, and 100% of consignment scenarios that I dabbled in, is that because they are writing this check to the middleman for all this money, they're now inflexible on their end because they have to pay them this percentage or this flat fee. Well, the middleman, he doesn't pay the insurance, he doesn't pay the taxes, or she. It's six half dozen or the other. The ending sales price. I mean, I guess if they get a percentage, it's in their interest to sell it for more. But they don't own it. So there's no huge motivation to really work on anyone's behalf because they have no skin in the game. They get paid upon sale. So really, they need to get it off their lot to make room for something else. But every single time I went into a consignment situation, everyone was like so rigid because they needed to basically make back what they were paying this middleman for. And all communication was difficult because now there's a lag. If you are going to pass the buck of responsibility for someone else to do all the negotiation, for someone else to take the pictures, do the listing, and then manage all your buyers and your potential sale of your vehicle, then it is super difficult for all involved if then you grind your heels in and won't negotiate or won't. I mean, you're allowed to ask whatever you want for on your rig. All I'm saying is that anytime I ran into a consignment, the people were asking way more, I felt, than what any kind of blue book or anything was saying because they were trying to make up for what they paid that middleman. And it just made everything difficult. Not all consignment middle people were horrible to deal with. Some of them were great to deal with. I had one in Wilmington. That guy was awesome. But there were more than a few cases where I couldn't even get the middleman to call me back because they didn't care. They had other business to do. So it took 3 days to get a phone call back or 4 days to get an email response. And meanwhile, I'm like, they're paying you all this money and you won't even respond to an email about a question I had about the service records. I had one in Florida where I said, hey, can you fax me, take pictures or something of the service record so I can have an idea about this rig before I spend hundreds of dollars to get to Florida to test drive it. And he said, no, that's too much work. And that was it. He just wouldn't do it. So I didn't buy that rig. I'm pretty sure the people who own that rig are not overly thrilled that somebody walked away from a sale because the middleman wouldn't have a conversation about the service records. Back on the buyer's end, do not go alone. I went down to Lazy Days with Battlefield Becky, friend of mine, and Patreon Deb. And it was so much easier doing all of this when I had other people. When you're in the RV dealership, it is like going through the Henry Ford factory assembly line. I mean, you've got to get insurance. You've got to test drive this. You've got to look at this paperwork. You've got to, all this information. And meanwhile, you've still got to inspect the whole rig. You've got to make sure that they inspected the rig. You're calling your insurance company and all this stuff. It was so overwhelming. I can't imagine any of it getting done. I probably would have walked away had Patreon Deb and my friend Becky not been there with me because it allowed me to do what I needed to do. When we went to test drive Bob, I could sit there in the driver's seat, listen to the car, feel how the car felt, pay attention to how it drove. And Becky was sitting next to me, and she's going through the glove compartment, and she's looking at all the service records, and she's looking at what they had and what they didn't, and she's asking the sales guy questions. And I was doing what I needed to do, was to make sure that truck was in good shape based on feel. I couldn't have done all that if I was by myself. When we went to do the final inspection on the War Wagon, I was freaking out over not being able to hook the truck and the fifth wheel up together because I couldn't do it the first time. And Deb was back there asking about the inverter and the converter and the electrical system because she knew I was going to want to do this thing later. And she was asking about the valve, and she noticed that there was a puddle of water underneath it, so she's asking about that. You have so much to manage when you are buying a big rig or even a small rig that to do it alone is going to be so stressful that it's not worth it. So bring someone with you. If you can get someone who also has RV experience, even better. It will allow you to concentrate on what you need to concentrate on. It will also take off so much of the anxiety. Deb was there when I was unable to hook up the fifth wheel to the truck the first time, and I think she has some video somewhere, but you probably can see on my face that I was freaking out. I couldn't physically do it. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done it before, and I couldn't do it, and I was like, oh, what have I done? Oh my God, I can't even hook this up, and like, I'm gonna drag this back to North Carolina. I turned around and I looked at her, and she saw the look on my face, and we had a moment. We talked it out. They were with me at the campsite, and every time I freaked out, I just had people who cared about me, who knew what my goals were, and who knew that I actually did really want this setup, who could kind of like get me past those hurdles. It's a scary thing driving something this big. It's going to be scary driving a Class C if you've never done it the first time. Hell, I was nervous driving the Babe Bus the first time. If you've got a little power group, a girl gang around you, or a bro club, whatever you need, it really does make the experience easier. That said, there was nothing fun about buying an RV. Just like get that out of your head. I have seen plenty of the same YouTube videos that you likely have watched where our cute, adorable couple, where the husband does like all the jobs that nobody wants to do and the wife is always in the kitchen, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case. You know, they like get on the RV lot and get in a golf cart and like go show you all the rigs and it's so much fun. No, it's not. It sucks. It sucks because even the brand new ones have stuff wrong with them. You've got to negotiate, which is difficult and sometimes really unrewarding, although I enjoy it because arguing is actually my favorite contact sport. Check the comment section if you don't believe me. You're talking about a lot of money. You're never going to find a rig that has everything you want in it. And sometimes the deals just fall through. How many times did we see me drive 4 or 5 hours one way to look at a rig that was either broken or completely filthy inside and then have to turn around? It was horrible. I hated every stitch of it. I hope I don't have to do it again for at least 6 months. So just please don't go into this experience thinking that this is going to be some really easy weekend where you go in and just pick something out and it's wonderful, because it's actually a really arduous multi-step process, and that's where your expectations should be. Also, your expectations, I was in Tampa for I think 2 weeks. My original plan was I would fly down, because Lazy Days has a program where they'll pay you back your flight ticket if you buy something there. So I was going to fly down. I was going to test drive the Tiffin, the used Tiffin that I wanted, and then I was going to drive back the next day. I was going to be there for maybe 24 hours. This took 2 weeks. Now, part of that was because Bob had to get here. You know, we did that exchange. But there was... You don't just like show up and pull an RV off the lot. Maybe at some dealerships, but at Lazy Days, I had to pick what I wanted. We had to then come up with the price. We then had to send it to get inspected, side tip in between all these other tips. This isn't just a Lazy Days thing. I think it's every dealership. They will tell you that they inspect the vehicles before that you get it. I think that inspection is maybe 3 items. you have to inspect it separately on your own. I'll get to that in a second. But, they inspect it, and then it took like 2 days to get back, and then I went and looked at it, and then I found things that were wrong with it, so then those had to get fixed. I had to get, the insurance is not immediate, so I had to figure out the insurance, and then I had to get Bob. I mean, it took forever. So this is not going to be a quick purchase, and it shouldn't be a quick purchase. Look at how much money these things cost. A house takes, 30 days? Now, this is not as much as a house. In some parts of the country it is, but to rush in and rush out is not going to happen. So if you need to fly somewhere to look at a rig, don't just book 2 hotel nights. Plan on at least a week, because that's about how long it takes. There's a lot of steps involved. So when to buy your RV? Now, I bought this whole thing in November. If you remember, I bought the Babe Bus at the end of October. I can't say enough about the value of buying a car or an RV at the end of the year. Every company in the United States of America is dealing with their finances at the end of the year. So they are, I would say, more motivated than other times of the year to get things off their books, to make room for new inventory. In the car world, RV world, this has never failed me. However, also understand how RVs manage their inventory, and this applies to cars too. When you walk into an RV lot, they don't own all those RVs. Are you crazy? Their inventory bill would be like millions and millions of dollars. When an RV dealership is getting in new rigs, what they do is they get a loan with a bank. So all those rigs, all the cars on a lot, are all on credit. So they pay a certain amount, and then the bank every month is billing them for the additional amount. Now, it's different everywhere, but there's a certain amount of time where they can have that RV on credit, and then if it hasn't sold in that amount of time, they have to write the big check to then buy it outright and own it on their lot. So it's in every dealer's best interest to get in inventory and then to get it out as fast as possible so that they're not writing those checks to the bank every single month. That said, if you really need a deal, I would look for a rig that has sat on a lot for a little bit longer than the others, because that means that they've been making payments on that rig. They don't want to make those payments. They want you to buy it. So if you found something that's kind of sat for a bit, chances are they're going to have way more interest in giving you a couple $1,000 off to get it out of their hands so that they don't have to write the full check to the bank. So you got to kind of have an understanding about how they finance on their end to figure out how you can get the best deal to finance on your end. If you decide that you want to go for an older rig, now, I don't really believe the argument, or people are like, oh, I can't believe you bought a new rig. The second you drive it off the lot, it loses 50. I don't actually believe that. I think it loses 50% of its value if you intend to trade in your rig. I don't know why people trade in. The only reason that I can see anyone would trade in anything, including cars, is if you just don't want to deal with any hassle, and you just want to drop it off and then go get something else. Dealerships exist to make money. They're private businesses. They have a right to earn income and make money for their shareholders. So there's no benefit to them to give you a deal and lose money on their end. They're going to give you the least amount possible on trade-in so that they can make some money. Plus, you are taking no responsibility. If you want to not assume the risk of fixing anything, not assume the risk or responsibility of having to sell it, then they're not going to give you like the full Monty value of that car or that RV. Why would they? You didn't want to do any work, so you don't make any money. Duh. That said, something that I don't think a lot of people do when they're looking at how much a rig costs is, they'll look at what a brand new one costs and say, that's insane. And sometimes it is. If you've not negotiated it, it will be. And they'll say, well, I can get, one that's 5 years older and it's this price. Well, what you need to add in is how much more it's going to cost you to modernize the used rig. For example, when I was looking at Class A's and trailers, I knew that I wanted automatic levels. I had watched couples outside get into very heated fights in the pouring rain trying to level their rigs, where he's outside and he's like giving her these hand signals to move the RV, and she's in there and can barely see through the wipers, and she's yelling at him and her like hands are going up, and it becomes a whole ordeal. I'm not standing outside in the cold or the rain. I wanted to push a button and have the levels. So when I was looking at some of the older models in any kind of rig that didn't have those, well, I was now looking at like $4,000 to $6,000 extra dollars to add those on. Okay, well now I've got that added expense for that thing I want, but it comes on the newer models. Okay. Well, what about, do you want USB ports? Do you want LED lights? Do you want tankless water heaters? So if you're going to save all the money on the sales price to buy an older rig, but then, I'll see people add all this stuff on it to kind of bring it up to par with how they want to live today. How much money are you actually saving? Because when you add all that up, you may not be saving a whole lot more than if you had just bought the newer one and negotiated that price down. It's just something to think about. It's easy to get in these when you're shopping and look at it and like try to go off of what kind of feels like home. But when you get down to the practical aspects about how you want to set it up and where are the tanks, I can tell you that my black tank, fresh tank, and all that, they've got this brand new system that, it's just really easy to flip, and you're done, pull, done. And then some of the older models I looked at were like way more rudimentary. These are just all things to consider. If you want modern amenities, how much more are you going to have to pay to add them to an older rig? Just something to think about. Negotiating a rig. Now, I really enjoy buying and selling things because I think negotiating is usually fun. And when I say negotiate, what I mean is talk about it for a while and then eventually do things my way. Some people hate negotiating, they hate haggling, they don't want to do it at all, they don't feel comfortable doing it at all. And if that's the case, the only thing that I will say in regards to improving your ability to negotiate, I'm going to suggest a book, because this book is the closest that comes to how I negotiate. It's a fascinating read. It's written by a hostage negotiator at the FBI. I don't follow all of his points, but I do think it is probably the closest training manual to at least how I've been able to successfully negotiate. And you'll learn an awful lot about how to, when you get in there and people are throwing numbers at you or they're saying that they can't do that or won't do that. I think this book is really badass and gives you some great tips on negotiating, especially large purchases. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I will put a link to the book below if you want to check it out. But I think he's really funny, and it's probably the best book on negotiating that I've ever read. And it's advice that like you wouldn't expect. And the only little hint I'll give you is that when Chris negotiates and I do the same thing, I'm not trying to get anyone to say yes. I'm trying to get them to say no. And you'll have to read the book to find out why. All right, and the last tip that I have is just whatever the price tag is listed online, just scratch that. And this goes for buying an RV or buying a car. When I was shopping for Bob, before Bob came into my world, and I guess this is a new thing dealerships are doing, they'll put like the price and then they'll put underneath that the internet price, where if you message them through their website, you get the internet price. And that's bullshit. It's still the actual price. They just lower it a dumb amount to get you in the door, and then by the time they add in all their fees, you're back at the original price anyway. It's a complete bait and switch. And the same thing went for many an RV. people, when owners are selling their RVs, you know, sometimes they put an emotional price tag on things that is not justifiable by the age or the wear and tear. And those are totally solvable if you can have a really sane, fair conversation about why the rig is actually probably this price versus 2 times that because, you know, it was their grandparents that they inherited from, or they have like some emotional reason, or because they added $20,000 worth of crazy bells and whistles that, you know, maybe added value for them, but not you. I mean, again, everyone can ask for what they want for their rig, but sometimes you do get into situations where it's just, you know, they want to sell it, you want to buy it, but like the price is not justifiably accurate. And dealerships are the same way. I had some dealerships that like wouldn't take off $500, and then I had some where they took off like $20,000 like without me even asking. So all I'm saying is that when you're buying an RV, if you know what your budget is, I would shoot for a pretty extensive range of possible options that you're considering, because the price has a flexibility that is rather insane. So, you know, try to like expand your horizons a bit, because there were rigs where I thought, well, there's no way that I can afford that. But then after we talked about it and it became obvious that they really wanted to sell it, like we were much closer to my budget. Honestly, the negotiating book that I just suggested will probably elaborate a little bit more about that. But just know that whatever price you see online, it's probably not the actual price. Okay, those are my big tips. I'm going to reiterate again that finding a salesperson who matches your buying behavior is probably the most important out of all of them. I wish I had done that in the very beginning. Just like finding a real estate agent. You know, real estate agents, there are some that are really good and there are some that are really horrible. Well, RV dealerships are not different. And if you can find a great real estate agent, you know, you might use them throughout your lifetime to buy and sell houses because they do a good job for you. And I would do the exact same thing for an RV. Find a dealership you feel comfortable being in and that you think is not going to call you baby, and that's going to treat you with respect, and also is interested in getting you into your rig that's best for you, not what's best maybe for their numbers that month. And then find a person within that company or dealership that most matches your personality. And that may be a call to the sales manager and just say, hey, you know, I'm really nervous about this. Like, do you have a salesperson that's maybe a little bit more compassionate than others? Or in my case, I would say I'm a fire-breathing dragon and I need someone who can handle the heat. Who do you have? I hope some of that was helpful to you all. I am off to a very beautiful southern city right now to meet up with my BFF from TV News, who has made a human that I have not met yet. And I need to add a little sparkle to his baby world. And I miss her. I haven't seen her in forever. And then when I get back, we're going to finish painting this thing. And we have some decisions to make about the valances or cornices, because I started taking them off and now I feel like the RV looks naked. So we're going to talk paint colors, and then also what to do about the curtain window blind situation when I get back. It's demo day. Woohoo! I'll talk to you weirdos later. Bye.